Hello, everybody. Professor Barth here, history professor at Arizona State University. I'm back in my comfort zone, monetary policy. Thanks a lot for watching the video in which I relayed my thoughts on Russia in Ukraine. Received a lot of great comments that elicited some excellent discussion and some respectful disagreement. I'm working my way through those comments now, but obviously it's an extraordinarily complex subject with in the midst of a fog of war, okay? But this morning, of course, the Bureau of Labor Statistics released the latest CPI numbers. Inflation reached 7.9% in February. That's over the year. So since February of 2021, consumer prices rose almost 8%. This is, once again, we're quite familiar with this statistic now, the highest in 40 years. In January of 1982, the CPI was 8.4%. So the inflation rate is actually very close to cracking that January 1982 number. And you look at the CPI over the last 40 years, this graph, and this is, this is alarming. Okay, where the $1 million question is, where does this end? How far does this go? And most analysts agree that it's not going anywhere. It's not going down anytime soon. And it's really just a matter of time before we hit double digits. In fact, I would not be surprised if once the March numbers come out in April, or sometime later this spring, definitely by the summer, I think we've got to expect and prepare ourselves, ready ourselves for double-digit inflation. So it's the 1970s all over again. And you look at the breakdown of where the various sectors and commodities that saw the greatest price increase. And this is a familiar story by now, of course. Used cars and trucks over 40%. Gasoline up 38%. Now keep in mind, this is very important, the rising in the retail price of gasoline, this is before the Ukraine invasion, okay? Pre-Ukraine invasion, up 38%. That's very important. More on that in a moment. Electricity up 9%. Used cars up 41%. Airline fares up 13%. And then we get to the essentials. Not that energy, obviously energy is essential as well, but meat, poultry, fish up 13%, flour up 12%, milk up 11%, eggs 11%, coffee up 11%, fruits and vegetables up 8%. And you can download the report directly from the Bureau of Labor Statistics website and look at the precise breakdown for yourselves. But this is putting a ton of pressure on American families. Average wages, income is not keeping up with inflation. It never does. Wages always rise at a slow. Wages always lag behind inflation. Okay, that's if it's not an economic law, it's a historic fact. It's a pretty strong pattern. Wages do not keep up with inflation. Average hourly wages rose by 1 penny in February, falling behind inflation. And to quote Ronald Reagan back in the 1970s, inflation is as violent as a mugger, frightening as an armed robber, and deadly as a hitman. And that is absolutely correct. This is nailing American families. Not to the gasoline. I mean, man, look at the gasoline prices. But just the prices across the board. This is again a tax. This is a tax on the American people. Your grocery bills are going up. I've got 4 kids, and it's hitting our pocket. If you make as I do, if you fall as I do in that category of Americans that makes less than 100K a year, okay, which is most Americans, this is a big deal, okay? It affects your daily life in big ways. So again, as I said in the last video, when Biden said I will not raise taxes on people making under $400,000 a year, that is untrue. Inflation is a tax. It's an insidious tax, and it hurts. It hurts working families. the rich and the wealthy, they can skate by for a bit. It'll eventually hit them, perhaps as well. Although there's money making speculative opportunities in an inflationary environment, but the working class, the people who build this country and again, I don't mean to use Marxist rhetoric here, because actually the wealthy also build this country. They start businesses, so I'm not hating on that. There's actually there's a such thing, obviously, as legitimate wealth. But with inflation, this targets especially people who are more vulnerable. Okay, and it makes a really big difference. And of course, the gasoline is just killing us at the pump. It's killing us at the pump. And naturally, what we've seen in the last week with the retail price of gasoline, which is at I think the national average is at $4.31 right now. Actually, here in Phoenix, we're above that. I'm seeing $4.59 for regular unleaded. Naturally, there are exogenous factors involved. Okay, nobody could possibly deny that. But watch as this is provided the Fed and the politicians in D.C. with the convenient factor to blame the inflation upon. Okay, to say, hey, look, you're seeing this in the news. Inflation. We were expecting it was under control. It was going to come down, but that war with Russia. The Russia-Ukraine conflict, that's what did it. And that narrative is making its rounds. And so you can expect, as inflation worsens, the Federal Reserve, and then especially the Democratic Party, because they're going to want to, as inflation gets worse, that's going to hurt their chances at the polls when the midterms come around. Okay, so they're going to want to, and they'll be able to. This is a convenient thing to point to: Russia-Ukraine. It's the Russian-Ukraine war that has caused this, and certainly that plays a major role. Okay, nobody can deny that. But I've said it once, I've said it twice, I've said it 4 or 5 times. I'm beating a dead horse here, okay? But I'll beat that horse bloody if I've got to, okay? Like that old mare in Dostoevsky's novel. If you've ever read Crime and Punishment, you know what I'm talking about. I'm going to beat that horse because look, with the coronavirus pandemic, the Fed more than doubled its balance sheet. Okay, more than doubled its balance sheet, and the money supply is up more than 40%. Okay. And so you're not going to gaslight us, no pun intended, or maybe pun intended. You're not going to gaslight us and shift all the blame onto Putin. They're saying this is Putin price increases. It's not Putin, okay? That plays a role, obviously, but this was already occurring. And look at this. This is the retail price of gasoline, national average, since summer of 2020. Early summer 2020, it was under $2 a gallon. In early February of this year, pre-Ukraine invasion, we were at $3.50. National average of $3.50 a gallon. Now it's $4.31. This is actually a little outdated here. Okay? Now it's really shot up. But this was happening already, and it was going to continue to happen. Okay? But it is true that this it's received a shock, an extra push from the war, and it has broad consequences, not the least of which is the price of fertilizer. Fertilizer, one of the major components, includes a lot of petroleum byproducts. Russia provides, I think it's approximately 1/5 of the major fertilizer components, like nitrogen, potash, phosphorus, you name it. I don't know anything about that industry, but what I do know is that farmers depend on fertilizer to grow their crops. So that's going to affect you in the grocery store. But notice this. This is a very interesting graph. This is fertilizer prices. Liquid nitrogen is in the green there. And this goes to December of 2021. That's 3 months ago. And it was shooting up. So again, pre-Ukraine invasion, fertilizer prices are shooting up. Now they're going to shoot up even more now with the war, okay? But don't let them gaslight you. This was happening prior to the invasion, okay? They're going to try to shift everything onto that, and it's not, okay? That worsened the situation, no doubt. But we were headed down this road, okay? We were headed down this road. But the fertilizer thing, you're starting to hear people talk about this. This is going to affect your pocketbook in the grocery store. And people say, oh, that's Putin in Russia. No. This was happening. The food prices were going up pre-invasion. Look at on the importance of fertilizer. This is from a local news article in Indiana, big farming state. Tim Aldrich, a farmer in Johnson County, Indiana, says he normally budgets $250,000 for fertilizer. He has about 1,000 acres of corn and soybeans. This year, he's upping his budget to $500,000. So his budget for fertilizer has doubled. Either guys aren't going to be able to put fertilizer like they have, or they're going to be forced to take out bigger operating loans. Aldrich believes with the increase in fertilizer and fuel, food prices are going to go up. Well, yeah, no kidding. They've got to go up. There's no option there. So the Fed is going to have its meeting next week, March 15th through 16th. Powell has already signaled that it's probably going to be a quarter percentage point hike. Perhaps they were leaning toward a half percentage point hike, and then the whole Ukraine-Russia thing broke out. And so they're going to play it a little safer and do a quarter percentage point hike. That will not cut it. You'll have some more hawkish voices like the president of the St. Louis Fed who will dare to maybe push for a half percentage point hike. But so the Fed's in a rock and a hard place. You've got to decide, do you want high inflation or do you want a major recession? Okay? And there's a good chance that you get both. You can have both. I call that stagflation. I recorded a video a couple weeks ago on QT, quantitative tightening. If you haven't watched that, you should watch it. And QT's it's a painful process. It's going to be a painful process. This country was addicted to cheap money. Not even ordinary Americans per se, but just the country at large and the government. Okay, the federal government was hooked, and the financial industry, Wall Street, was hooked on cheap money, and now it's time. Now the hangover is coming. Okay, and Republicans will say, oh, it's Joe Biden and the Democrats, and to be sure, the federal government is spending money like a drunken sailor in a brothel, okay? And they should be condemned for that, and they should be voted out of office for that. But who gave them the liquor? Who gave that drunken sailor the liquor? And it was the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve enabled all this reckless spending from the federal government. That's what devalued our dollar. At the end of the day, it's the Federal Reserve. No, don't let them tell you otherwise, okay? Bad policy from the Federal Reserve over the last 2 years. That was 2 years ago. Hard to believe that was 2 years ago. That's the culprit of and here we are today, and we're dealing with the consequences of it. Okay. Wish I could be more optimistic. Regrettably, I gotta give you the truth as I see it. So anyway, take care and God bless. See you next time. Bye.